I have to start like that because everyone deserves a theme tune, but I think that out of everyone that I know, Shahroo, not just with your name, but with your presence, you really, really deserve your own theme tune. This morning, sitting down with the gorgeous Shahroo Izadi, you are an award-winning behavioral change specialist and author. And whether it's through your coaching practice, corporate training, public masterclasses, global keynotes, best-selling books, or your media appearances on the world's leading platforms, you are dedicated to empowering the most change-resistant individuals with tools that compel, enable, and equip people to manage their own habits on their own terms. Welcome, welcome, Shahroo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ah, it's so wonderful. I want to go back in time a little bit. I'm trying to remember personally, when did we meet? Because it's like years ago.
I think we met in Wales. I came to one of your classes. I came to one of your classes in Neil's Yard. And we met at the big retreat in Wales, I think.
Oh my God, is that it? Isn't it, you know what, isn't it so beautiful how you can have two people in the same room, essentially having had the same experience, but remembering completely different details. So from where I sit, I was sitting here going, I think it was Tony. So remember Tony Shelf Help Club?
Of
Right.
course, she's one of my good dear friends.
Right. Well, she was hosting like, I think when she turned 40, she had a big birthday celebration, which she kind of turned into a birthday event. And I was teaching there. And I remember, I think you ran like a whole amazing behavioral change workshop as part of that event. And that's when I'm thinking back, that's kind of the first moment where I remember you. And chronologically, maybe we'll look at dates and I'm just totally wrong and Wales was the first time. But who knows? My point is that's the point where I really remember because I sat there in your workshop, not just listening to the words and the advice you were giving, but really feeling the genuine desire, the passion to empower people to remember that they have a choice to have a change. And that was really the big thing that stood out to me. Like you really, really, really deeply touched something within me. And so that's my sort of, the beginning of knowing about you. That was really that moment for me. So yay.
Thank you, Josie.
No, of
I
course.
think I remember that as well. That was a really, really good event.
It really was. Okay, so Shahroo, take us back in time, as always, to understand who you are today, who you became. Let's understand where you came from. What was your family setup? Where are you from? What kind of system were you born into?
My parents were Iranians, born in Iran, and I have a little brother and two parents, and I grew up between the States and the UK, and I was born in London, and now I live in London.
Oh, wow. And growing up in the States, so whereabouts in the States?
We were in California for a few quite formative years. So I did like most of junior school there and things like that. Yeah.
California, like San Diego, Los Angeles,
Right,
where?
Los Angeles, yeah.
Los Angeles. Okay, so what you don't know, what's happened since I saw you last is I was about to say I now have a boyfriend. Well, I'm actually engaged and he's from California. Hence why I'm now like, exactly where? Because I've been
You're
on
on
date
the
coach.
specifics. Yeah, congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so you grew up between these two places. When did you move to London?
I moved back. I was born here. I moved back when I was about 10, I want to say 9, 10, something like that. And yeah, and I've just been living in the UK since.
And
Been living
was
by myself for 15, 16 years now.
perfect. So when you moved back and you were 10, did you move back with your whole family, mom, dad, brother, or was just you and mom, or what was
It was, yeah, all of us. All
all
of
of
us.
you? Wow, amazing. And whereabouts in London?
Well, actually, we were just outside. I was born in North London in Hendon. And then when we moved back, we moved to Surrey and I went to school there in Walton.
Amazing. And when you're looking back and you're talking to 10-year-old Shahroo, who's just arrived, sort of with a whole family, back into England, London, and going, okay, this is going to be us for a while, right?
Mhm.
How did you feel?
I think I was quite gutted because we had a lot of family in the US and there's a huge like Iranian diaspora there. And so there's more of a sense of village and familiarity. So I think I was quite gutted because we had cousins and we had more family there. But I was really up for English life. Like I had a really romantic sort of Mary Poppins idea of what London, what the UK was going to be like. I think I, I think I recall like almost putting on an accent before I had a real one. Because I just really I liked the idea of living in London. Yeah, it was double-edged in that sense. I think ideal world, I would have had all of my family here.
Of course, I totally get that. But I also love that. I love because, I'm thinking back, and when I was 9 years old, I'm from Copenhagen. I remember my mom was talking about, oh, not even moving country, just moving house. My mom was like, oh, Josie, maybe we might be moving out. And I was so resistant to change. I was like, no, like literally tears. And this was just a brief conversation. I was like, this is not happening. And for some reason, I'm getting some deep voice. Like every fiber of my being, this feeling of a change that I couldn't control and where I didn't know would it be a good thing, would it be a bad thing. It was, remembering back, that was like brutal for my little 10-year-old self. So to hear your story and you going, actually, I already put on the English accent, and you having this sort of really romantic idea about the world you were about to enter. I really love that. That's really, really beautiful. What about the rest of your family? How was your brother about that? Was he also excited, or how was he feeling?
He was younger than me. I think it was probably harder for him in some ways and easier for him in some ways. He was probably less established with his little buddies in the States.
Exactly. Of course. So you are the oldest one of the two?
Yeah. Yeah.
By
And
how much?
by I think 18 months, 19 months, just under a couple of years. Yeah, I think it was probably different for him because also I believe, yeah, my first language was Farsi. So I learned how to speak English in the States.
Wow.
Um, and so I think, yeah, even though the gap was quite small, we would have had quite different experiences of that. I don't know, actually. I've never asked him, to be honest.
No, no, makes sense. But also, I just need to catch up on my own brain here this morning. Did you say you were actually born in London? So
Yeah.
then when you were coming back, did it, even in a little child mind, did it feel like we're going home? Because no.
No, I had no idea. As far
Okay.
as I was concerned, I lived somewhere that was warm and there were people I knew everywhere.
Got you.
They sounded like Americans. Until I came back. This was like movie world for me. I remember being quite happy to sort of learn that I was born here, you know.
Yeah. I love it, Shahroo. And then you guys enter, and without revealing too much about your specific age, but what year are we talking ish?
Oh, I don't mind telling you, I'm
Yeah.
40.
Amazing. Oh, you are.
Yeah, so I was 40 this year, so that'll be like, I don't know, 95, something like that.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm turning 40, so this is another little synchronicity between you and I. That's so amazing. I love this. Ah,
You're
interesting.
turning 40 this year.
Yes, I am. Amazing. Okay, so entering into that era of England, how was that? So you had this romanticized idea, already got your English accent going, and then you arrive. And how was that?
Josie, I've got to tell you.
Please do.
Only you would have me talking about this at 8:12 in the morning time.
Totally.
I want to make it very clear when we're listening back, when anyone's listening, it is the morning time. And Josie's like, and now the next stage of your life, what happened then? And I'm like, oh, you're either going to get the most honest version ever of me, or people are going to be like, is that lady asleep? uh,
I love
um,
you.
sorry, 95. What did you tell me? 95. What happened?
So you're coming.
I'm coming back to, I'm going
You're coming back to the UK. Coming back
Yes.
to the UK, you're having this amazing, like Mary Poppins, like you're actually excited about it. You're
Yeah.
like romanticizing England, and then you're landing here with your family. And how is it to land in the year of 1995 England?
It's
Is it wonderful Iranian slash American slash English? How is that?
It was the year 1995. It was, do you know what? I got to be honest with you, Josie. One of the things that I struggle with, I guess, and I know that a lot of people do since I've started talking about it, is I don't remember that much about my childhood. I don't remember it in order that way or chronologically that way.
Yeah.
You know, like when you do like a life story exercise, much like now, but in a more sort of like inward journey kind of healing kind of way. I always think to myself, I just don't remember things in that way.
Yeah.
I have to have more sort of anchors, or there has to be a story, like a formative story. You know what I mean? And I speak to people sometimes, like now I can tell you how I felt, but I can do it based on the things that went on during that time and then deduce that I must have felt this kind of way. Do you know what I mean?
Understood. Yeah, you know, I absolutely understand that. And you know what? Let's stick with that because that's super interesting because that really shares something very deep about you. And that I'm also sure that if this is how you experience time and if this is how you kind of experience the density, the layers of existence itself. I know, super philosophical here at 8:14 in the morning. But if that is how you experience that, then that means lots of other people will also be out there experiencing that. So that's a really good point. I'm similar personally in the same thing that I never remember dates or years. For me, it's exactly, I go very much by events and people that I spent time with during something chapters in my life. I also, you know, if you were like, okay, so Josie, you know, I'm from 85 like yourself, right? So if you were like 1988, what happened? Wouldn't have a clue. Not just because I was so little, but because I really would have zero recollection, not even of things that my parents would have told me. I'm really not good like that either. But in that case, so then let's just do something different. So let's do this thing where we go, okay, so you're moving into, you've been in England for a while. We don't know how while long, and that's fine. Take us back to a moment in time where something deeply talked to you, something deeply spoke to you. So Shahroo, you're a teenager, you've been in England for a while, and all of a sudden something within you goes, whether it's a good thing, it's a challenging thing, whether it's an exciting thing, something starts to move within you. Maybe something starts to break down about I thought England would be really romantic and amazing, and maybe something is shifting because you're a teenager. Doesn't it shift for
Yeah,
all of us?
I think there were a few things going on when I was a teenager. One of them, one thing that I was happy with was, I think, whether it was growing up in the States or the way my parents raised us, the making friends thing in the end was okay for me. There was a type of confidence that I had, or I wasn't in a rush to make friends, I think. But the liking yourself, picking your friends, knowing what you like thing, I wasn't great at. I was quite codependent. I was quite ready to just like be whatever kid needed me to be cool in that context, you know. And I think when you move from another country, especially during that kind of age, there's opportunities to feel shameful because you're different from every angle. And I know that people feel different, feel sort of exposed and invisible at the same time if they're different in a way that other kids notice. And I certainly was, and not because I had an American accent or anything like that, but because I was much bigger than other kids by that point, visibly bigger. And I lived in a time where like it wasn't weird for teachers to tell you, you know, like it wasn't, I lived in a time. But also I had a stammer, so I started stammering when we were living in the States, which persisted until now to some degree. Like when I say my first name, I stammer now. And I'm always trying to work out what it is and stuff. And I'm pretty sure now it's because the pronunciation of my name was sort of given to me. And there were a few situations where, you know, you have to sort of introduce yourself in a group or something like that. That's where I used to stammer really, really badly. And it makes me wonder whether that experience of going to the States without speaking English and then coming back here to almost learn a different English setup made me quite anxious to some degree, and also a bit of a chameleon, which is something I had to unlearn later. So it was like, do what you need to do to survive in this new environment. And I think I became very good at it. And I'm sure it's lent itself to my ability to connect with people quickly and different types of people. But it meant that, like a lot of other people who, you know, quote unquote people pleasers, whatever, have had to kind of learn, okay, in all of this, who am I? Like, do I actually agree with this? Did I start thinking this because that at this stage in my life, that was the way to think, etc. I think you're just more susceptible to that, to the messages that give you some sort of insight into the formula to fit in.
100%. And I mean, so yes, we communicate on so many different levels, not only verbally, but verbal communication is the number one tool that most of us are taught, right? So it would make so much sense. Even that earlier on, you were sharing with us that I think I even put on the English accent before I even got there. It was like, it was so geared into your mindset that I need to be able to find my voice. And it's not even my voice, it's just the voice that apparently that society, that group of people accepts, right? Because then I'll somehow be safe. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
But I think also that's just the way kids work things out, right? You look around you, what's acceptable, what makes me acceptable. You're looking around for the information that you need to navigate things in the most stress-free way possible as a young person. And I think the information I was looking for is what can I do for people, or try to make myself for people that will make them like me, to be basic. Yeah.
right, yeah, absolutely. And so with this story in the background of your mind, perhaps also in the foreground of your mind, late teens into early 20s, whether or not that's chronologically correct, but somewhere around there, you're finishing school. Did you go to uni? What was your, what happened in Shahroo life?
With the chronology thing, I mentioned it not because you're not excellent at leading it through and reminding me, but more because I think it's actually quite interesting how many of us are trying to explore why it is we don't remember certain gaps. Like I can be very dissociative, and now I'm just wondering whether it's become a strategy. At this stage of life when you've had the opportunity to do the sort of the fundamental work, and you're looking back and you're like, I wonder if I just forget things because I learned to because I couldn't handle them. But anyway, yes, I went to university. I took a couple of gap years, and then I went to university and studied psychosocial sciences in Norwich, which I loved. I love Norwich. I love it so much. It was my favorite. I met the friends I have now who I'm closest to, I met there. And we're still friends now. I'm staying at one of their houses now as we record this with her kids.
Ah,
And we went to uni. I did psychology, and then I went to do a placement with the NHS as an assistant psychologist in a substance misuse service. So by my mid-20s, I was well into addiction work, key working, criminal justice work, and I essentially obsessed with working out how to help the most change resistant people. Like what combination of tools and conversations and groups and interventions would make it so that essentially you could make yourself redundant to someone. I became fascinated by this. That was how I could see real empowerment happening when I worked in the NHS, when I worked for substance misuse charities, when I was watching people who work on the front line. And I just thought, this stuff's all going to be very, very useful for a lot of people. So I used it on myself. It was wildly useful for me. And by stuff, I mean essentially just the tools and exercises that I was learning. And for me, it was brilliant because academically, I mean, when it comes to traits, like ADHD traits, for example, my friends always joke, but it is true. I mean, I really am on the sharp end of obviously having them. And it was at work that I realized that I process information and learn very, very quickly when I'm with other humans, interacting with other humans. Like literally now. When we started speaking, even now compared to when we first started, I would have been more fluent. I would have, not just because I've woken up, but you know, but I know I learned a lot there, being put in context that maybe I wouldn't have been put in otherwise. What it is that keeps me focused, who it is that keeps me focused. And so it helped me identify not only what am I going to love doing, but also like what's going to keep me industrious and what's going to make me feel smart. Because exams, as is the case with a lot of people with my traits, exams was something that I could do, but kind of memorized what I needed to, and it wasn't that sort of like grounded, deep understanding that I have now that means I can just speak on something and answer questions like this, didn't prepare or anything like that. And so, yeah, and then after that, just started working in substance misuse. But university was a very it was difficult in some ways in terms of the relationship that I had with myself, because the unhealthy habits that I had and the way that I treated myself and the more neglectful side of things. And by that point, because I gained a lot of weight and I was really quite unhappy with myself, the negative self-talk, everything that can fester, did, you know, without interruption, without routine of family. And I could kind of go off grid a little bit, which I loved, which I've since realized that I love. I love being off grid. I love people not knowing where I am, things like that. It's actually quite an important need of mine. But at the time, I hadn't learned myself enough yet to know that I shouldn't really go off grid for too long ever. And that's it was a real freedom and it was a real sense of agency that I could claim now, but left without a framework for it or an idea of how I was going to do it. I just kind of neglected myself, really, like unhealthy habits and things like that. And I know students do in general, but I think when you're already coming from a foundation of that, plus because I was overweight and, at the time, the best, but like the thing the doctor would tell you to do if your kid was overweight, for example, was, put them on this routine diet, whatever. So it meant that some aspect of deprivation or rebellion would have been there too. So when I went to uni, I was just eating not just like someone who could eat whatever they wanted in the same way that, university students are like, brilliant, I can have pizza for breakfast sort of thing. But in a very much like rebellious, I can eat as much as I like. And I imagine, or well, I'm sure that came from a place of getting the message early on that because you look a certain way, you can't eat as much as you like or as much as other kids are eating. So I think that had the sort of boomerang effect that one would expect when I got to uni.
Wow. Oh, so deep here. I can't just be like, oh yeah, novice skipping ever. I just have to take a breath. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Shahroo. That's very courageous and very beautiful. I really appreciate that. So you're at uni. All of this is taking place. What comes next? Because this is the interesting part, right? This is obviously the interesting part, and it's also the interesting part about not just what we call addiction, but human being behavior in general, right? So there's always this thing. A million people, well-meaning people, can advise us, try and support us, try and guide us, and also be like, hey, why are you doing this thing? Whatever it is. But until something within us goes, I want to do things differently, whatever it is, even if it's just a teeny tiny little voice that goes, it doesn't have to be this way. Or even the teeny tiny voice that goes, this ends now. Whatever the voice is, until something happens within us, we don't choose a different course, right? So what? So you're in that place, and like you said, things were festering. There wasn't the normal routine and distractions, etc. So what's a point in you where you remember going, whether you share with us what the voice was, the main voice in the mind that was like, okay, let's do this. Let's try. Even if there's just a shimmer, a slither of something. Maybe there is another way. Can you talk us through that a little bit? Because I think also because exactly like you were mentioning, especially with very young people going to uni or going to any kind of education, it might be the first time they're away from home, right? This is such a pivotal moment. And especially for people listening, this is such a wonderful thing to tune into and listen to, that whatever you're going through, you are not alone in that experience. The story, it might be different. You may have a different family setup than you do, and than I do. But what you're feeling, this deep sense of wanting to figure out a different way, having no clue if that's even possible for you. But just really that thing of, okay, so Shahroo was there, I've been there. What was it for you? When did something start to shift, even if it's just a slither?
Do you know what? I'd like to say that this was self-motivated to some degree, but honestly, after uni, I just wanted to move to London as quickly as I could. And my mate was already working here. Well, he worked for a conference company in Fulham, so he kind of got me a job. Where he got me an interview for a job, and so I just started doing a job I didn't really care about. It didn't even, I didn't, I don't know that I thought that I would be able to get a job in psychology. I don't know that I thought that would be possible. And so for a couple of years, I was doing different stuff. I was an editor, I was working for a conference company, I worked for an art charity, and I got made redundant. And I remember at the time, I was like, this was my first job in London. And it was
Mm.
like, it was in Fulham and it was all nice. And I was living in London with my friends. And I was like, this is it. Like, I just love conferences. I want to just arrange conferences. But you know what, Josie, I didn't love it. But at the time, you kind of realize that just going to work, the optics of going to work, the optics of the things that you find novel and exciting for a while, they really do last for a good chunk of time. Um, and I worked with my friend, which was just awesome. And we had a great time. But that's probably not unrelated to why I got made redundant, to be honest with you, come to think of it. Um, but yeah, I got made redundant. And I remember being absolutely devastated. And my mum immediately said to me, go. I hadn't done my master's yet. She was like, why don't you go back and do a master's in psychology and get accredited by the British Psychological Society? And because it's this course is accredited by the society, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I want to. I don't think I want to study. I don't want to do stats. I don't want to all of it. I just didn't want to do it. Anyway, it took me 2 years to listen to my mum, maybe a bit less, but nothing fundamental happened other than eventually I listened to my mum, and I think that sometimes I just need permission to be told like it's going to be okay. And I don't mean it necessarily like in a safety net kind of way. I mean in a more like a perspective kind of what's the worst that could happen, play it out. And my mum's very, very good at that. Um, and so she was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? You have a master's, you pay it off, you already have these side hustles anyway. So I did my master's, and that I loved. I loved my thesis. I loved, I think it was because I didn't really have a social component to it. So I just went in the evenings with other adults and I was working, and I realized like I needed to be industrious. And anyway, I learned a lot about myself. And that was when I started studying psychology, and almost, I think maybe having done the conference thing. Obviously, I'm not against conferences. You can have a conference about anything, but the the operations, the not the not dealing with people directly, all of that kind of stuff. It wasn't until I was learning about psychology again that I was like, oh, it's possible that you don't just have to be excited to be good at what you do, or for other people to think it's cool that what you do, whatever. It's possible to actually enjoy the content of what you do.
Not the idea.
Or
Yeah.
not the idea, but also not even the fact that you're good at it. Because sometimes I think to myself, do I enjoy this, or am I just good? Do I just enjoy being good at something? Which I'm sure is true also, and I'm sure those are kind of becomes an egg chicken thing. But no, I genuinely was like, the day has flown. Like the difference between doing an exercise that you're distracted and you think is good, and an exercise that you just think every minute is a year. And uh with master's level psychology and with working, the fast pace element of it, the fact that I'm so scattered and it takes so little to make me lose track. But if someone is sitting in front of me and trusting me with their story and connecting with me, it's like nothing, it's like 5 hours can go past, nothing can exist. And I don't know what's happened before. I like it's an amazing thing. I'm sure you have it also. And I came across that and I was like, well, obviously I don't even know if it was a conscious choice, Josie. I was just knew from that point on, this is what I do. And it comes most easily to me. It comes most easily to me, despite being the hardest job I've ever had. It was much harder than the conference work,
Mm.
but it came more easily to me. And I found that when it comes to working in the helping professions, for me, if I don't keep a toe in the area where I can be most helpful and effective in the world, and by the way, I don't know honestly if this is because I'm such a lovely person or just ego, who knows, but it will bother me. It will bother me until eventually I'm going to have to balance it out myself somewhere else, you know, it'll bother me. And when you learn in contexts like that, that you can help to that degree and you can be effective in a way that combines something robust and evidence-based that you're learning and your personality and the skills or the trauma legacy skills that you've got. You can combine them and genuinely help someone. Honestly, I think, Josie, it becomes harder not to help than it does to help.
Oh, 100%.
And again, I don't want to make it like because I'm such like a bleeding heart, you know, I care about people, of course, I'm a caring person, but I think that sometimes it's just a case of saying, if I know I can help this much, and I know I can be this effective, and I know there's a context in which I can feel totally comfortable, even when other people wouldn't. I mean, I don't know anyone who would have wanted to work in the places I worked, by the way. Don't look at now with the books and the, you know, the books and the talks and stuff like that. Someone come work in needle exchange with me and tell me how aspirational that is. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And so all that to say, the turning point was being made redundant. And I think, as you well know, a lot of us, it's unrealistic to think that people are going to disrupt the status quo just because they want to have a better life and the grass may or may not be greener. And so although I'm not trying to take myself off the hook for having not like uprooted and transformed Eat, Pray, Love vibes, I don't think I'm on my own when I say that it took something being forced upon me to have less to lose, really. I wouldn't have given up my salary, even though now when I think about it, you know, it's such a lesson in gratitude and punctuating your life, because it just popped into my head how much the salary was that I'm just like, I wouldn't lose my salary. As if I'm feeding 10 kids and I'm like Wolf of Wall Street. Josie, I remember when she wrote down the number, I was like, I'm a millionaire. Like now, I'm not sure it would pay, I'm not sure before anything else, it would pay a year's rent in this place I could think of, you know? So I think that, I wouldn't have given it up. And I wouldn't have risked not being able to live in London and all these other things. And so I think I'd like to say, like, now I would take a punt on myself. I know myself well enough. If I was unhappy, I would know that it would be a false economy and that actually I was wasting time, really, because it's only a matter of time before I come out of this, because eventually I always do what I want anyway. And I have the luxury of doing so because of the, you know, the lack of responsibility in a lot of ways that I have. And I just removed myself because I know that if I resented it, provided I wasn't worrying about money all day. I always want to say this. It's a very privileged statement to make, like 20 years into my career. But I think I'd remove myself because, frankly, when I'm unhappy, or if there are extended periods where I feel like I'm not being of genuine use, it damages my sense of self-worth, which damages my sense of capacity, which damages my ability to, you know, do a fidelity to evidence base and give people something that's genuinely effective. And so I think I cut to the end with that kind of thing, the same way you do when you're older. You know how some people are like, I'm not trying with the one drink thing anymore. I cut to the end. Drinking's not for me. For me, doing work that makes me feel anything like it did when I worked in the conference place, not for me. And not because that was bad. I didn't even know that was bad, but because it's not something that makes time fly.
No, exactly. And it doesn't set your soul on fire. Like, just, I know that's quite a big statement, but it's like, I mean, we can live lives that from the outside ticks all boxes, etc., etc. You know this, I know this, and how boring is that? And you know, you can do it for an amount of time because it, you know, it's always about needs, right? It fulfills another need that we may not even realize that we had. I'll give you an example of me. So here we are. Here's a fun fact about me. When I have to be out on public transport, well, I choose to in rush hour, part of me goes, "Ooh, yay! I'm part of the group. We're all going to a thing." Because I've been, you know, I've chosen to be self-employed my entire life. So at times my story is like, "Oh, I'm all alone." You can do what you need to do if you need to, you know. So I'm there on the tube, And there's a part of me, there's a sense of a need to kind of belong. And when I'm in that rush hour tube and everyone else is also in the rush hour tube and we're all in this together. And for a brief moment, I look around and I'm like, yes, I'm also that woman and she's going to that place and she's part of that thing. And I'm a completely different woman for those like 20 minutes I'm on that tube, right? And then I follow down and I'm like, oh, should I really go in? Should I try and like just be like full on full time with one company? Like, is this really my true self? And then I leave the tube and I'm like, absolutely no way. Like, I know who I am. But my point is, during those 20 minutes, that journey that I chose to be on somehow fulfilled a really deep need in me to belong. Even if it was a group that I perhaps, I don't want to belong to their 8 hours a day in the same building with the same people, but just to kind of dip my toe into it. So I just think it's that thing of like, right? Certain experiences fulfills certain needs that we may be aware of that we have, or we may not be aware of that we have. And it made sense for you at that moment in time until it no longer did. And even that served its purpose, because you probably wouldn't have realized that thing about yourself if you hadn't had that other experience. So you in your conference time in younger Shahroo life, in early Shahroo days, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think in your experience, sorry, I'm malfunctioning in some sort of very basic but very strange sinusy way. I keep thinking I'm going to sneeze. I'm not making weird faces at you. I was going to say, when you said the thing about the tube, Josie, first of all, I think anyone who's commuted for years would just find what you said, which I completely agree with, by the way. Like, this is an insult, okay? The rush hour is novelty to you. Get out of my face. Right. But I know what you mean. And I sometimes wonder these days whether that's a self-employed thing. Like, because we don't get appraised, we don't know how well we're doing, we don't feel like we've got colleagues. I'm in perpetually just shifting back and forth from thinking, wow, I've got the best job in the world, to like, am I unemployed? You know what I mean? Because you haven't got the optic. You've got the same. Do you know, I speak to so many self-employed people who are the same. We're just like, some days I wonder if I'm unemployed, and some days I wonder if I never dreamt in a million years I'd be the success. There's not really anything in between. And it's like, do you have that as well?
I love it so much. You know what? It's so true. I think it's just like, you have these really high moments, right? My high moments, I will say this, hands up out here. My high moments, it's always the deep connection to another person. So like what me and Shahroo are having right now, I'm like, yum. Like my whole being is like, yes, 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 yes. This feels so good. I'm doing a little dance over here. Like genuinely. And then there are other moments that on papers should make me feel really happy. It doesn't. I know that for my career, business, and business is business. We need a good foundation, all the rest. And that makes sense. There are lots of moments that make sense that I chose to do, and I'm proud. I'm proud of them in inverted commas. I'm mainly proud that I allowed myself the opportunity to do something I was extremely scared of doing. Extremely scared of doing. That's the part I'm proud of. That's the part that feels rich and that makes me feel juicy inside. It makes me feel like, I like this, Josie. Well done. You allowed yourself to expose a part of you that felt super vulnerable. You invested a huge amount of money, because I never used to invest in anything really that I did. I just was like, I can make a thing. And I was so scared that maybe the world would be like, some people would be like, oh, we don't like this. And then I was way more scared of my own brain, of what my brain would do if I was listening to a lot of people not liking me, and would I be able to still like me? Because, I can run away from all the other voices outside, but I couldn't run away from my own inner voice, right? And I know my inner voice very well. I've spent a lot of Josie life trying to make friends with all the voices in my head. So yeah, that thing of like, am I am I unemployed? I think it's definitely, you always fluctuate. And I think whether you're self-employed or choose not to be, whatever you do in life, I think everyone can relate to that thing of like, do I belong? Do I not belong? Am I chosen? Am I not chosen? Am I a success? Am I a failure? But that statement was just so cool. Like, am I actually unemployed? It really rings so true. I think it is that thing. Do I belong to something? I know I'm choosing to belong to my own thing, but I'm still part of something else. It's very deep. Yeah. So in short, yes, I resonate.
Mm. You need to get on the train and get your little Wolf of Wall Street fix and then
Yeah. And then I'm out.
meditate. Yeah.
But I think it's that thing of like, do you do that as well? Where you kind of like you look at other people's life and you kind of for a brief moment you're like, ooh, what if I was that person? And you look at what she's wearing and you look at how her gestures, you look at everything, or a man for that sake, and then you're like, you kind of try and find yourself in the other, right? You're like, is that me? And then usually it's like, no, that's not really me, or maybe part of it is me. Yeah.
I think that I don't do that as much. I don't sort of work myself out as an adult in that way specifically, but I do a similar thing in that I'm very proud of what my friends reflect back to me in what they have in common and what we all have in common.
I love that.
You know, sometimes when you're like, especially when you do a lot of changing and working on yourself and all this stuff, it'll be really, I think it can be really concerning to look around you and be like, okay, all these people are the same in this way. Where, you know, they've chosen me. And obviously it sounds mega codependent to be saying it that way, but ironically, it's the fact that I've dealt with so much codependency stuff that I'm proud to be at a place where the people I'm looking at are not preaching to the converted. They know me very well. You know, they can tell me things I don't want to hear. These are also, you know, important things that I've had to kind of learn how to do. But I think more and more when I think about when I think about sort of working out who I am and where I'm at, whether it's professionally and, you know, joking aside with the unemployed, self-employed, you know, all of it, it is hard to know where you're at. And we do need as humans to feel like, where do I sit? You know? And when I am worrying with that, I don't really look to my work as much as I do my friends. I'm very, very proud of my friends. I'm very proud of what they do in the world, how they show up in the world. And I'm proud of the things that we have in common. And I admire in them qualities that I can see in myself, which is also, I think, really lovely. So recently I've become friends with someone who also writes books, and we just, you know, when you meet people as an adult and you sometimes think, oh, I'm surprised we weren't, you know, friends the whole time, kind of thing. And she has a number of qualities that I really, really like. And I realized that some of them are qualities that both of us, she and I, have historically learned to apologize for, or think that we need to kind of like shake out of ourselves or unlearn or coach out of ourselves. And it was so astonishing because I was like, oh, I think that's a lovely way to be. I was like, oh, I love that you're like that. And I realized, God, that's so nice because I'm like that. And maybe my opinion of that sort of behavior is not that it's overcompensating or too much or not chill. And maybe my idea of that behavior is that it demonstrates care and concern and reflection, self-reflection, the ability to self-reflect, the thoughtfulness of it, you know, all these wonderful things. And so in the spirit of, you know, changing how we speak to ourselves and things like that, I think the exercise of seeing how you feel about who you've become, particularly when you've done a lot of work on yourself, I think is assisted majorly by looking at who's around and how they are, not even how they are towards you or anything like that, but like how they are in general. And because it's likely you've attracted people who are similar to yourself. And if you like them and they're cool and have all these different qualities and you guys operate well and you've been friends for a long time, then they should be able to give you a good idea of where you're at.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And also because, you know, we are here to be with one another. You know, I really believe if we were supposed to do not just do everything, but just exist by ourselves, we would have been placed on a planet by ourselves. Nature is pretty clever usually. You know, nature is pretty precise. I think that's really beautiful, Shahroo.
But London's also really efficient at giving you your private space if you need to.
That's so true.
I have to say that. Like, I have to say that for sure. I agree. Of course, you know, circle of life, all of it. But I'm definitely someone who is able to appreciate being together and the togetherness of the support and the village and the family and the taking the, you know, constructive the feedback constructively and all that stuff, provided I have been alone. This is very important for me. I know it's not for a lot of people, but for me specifically, I got to be alone.
And it's so beautiful knowing that about yourself. I as you probably notice, I'm very extroverted, but at the same time, I need a lot of time by myself. So, you know, the waves make sense. I wanted to ask you, with your books, is there something that just comes, as in all of a sudden you start getting this idea, like there's part of you that needs to come through, that wants to be expressed, that wants to be seen? Is it a very cognitive thing? Is it a very physical thing? Where does it start?
It's observation, Josie. I feel like now with the books, with a couple of big podcasts that I did, the number of people who are giving me information that could help other people, be it to help them feel less lonely because they're telling the same story and they think that they're the exception, or telling me their story because they see themselves in my story, or I feel like my books are just, it doesn't come like book first then work. It's
Yeah, yeah.
work for a long period of time and then share my observations and whatever the distilled iterated version of what's working for people is at that stage in my career. So for example, the kindness method, my first book, had evidence-based methods, but evidence-based in the context of a clinical environment. Now the evidence is coming in the way of tens of thousands of emails, you know, about the kindness method, how I used it, how I didn't, how I could, you know, how I would improve it, etc. It's come in the form of people who've come and become my clients or come on my courses or come to workshops or whatever else. And so now it's been iterated to a point where the next book will be that plus what I learned more of because of the luxury of hearing more stories because of the book. So no, it doesn't just kind of come to me. It tends to be that I'm making notes constantly every single day. And then the book becomes a consolidation and a refinement of what I think would be useful in book form. Really, books are just one way that I say the same thing that I'm saying for the rest of the day in different ways. And so, no, I don't sit and decide that I want to write a book. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever decided to write a book. I think it'll always be that I'll be speaking to my agent, I'll be speaking to someone about something that I've got really into or something that I've observed. And it's sometimes what that thing is commercially compelling or can be presented in a way that is that lends itself to a book. But I don't I don't think about it that way. And for the same reason, I like writing, but I'm very intentional in my books to be useful, not clever. You know, because that's the point of them. It isn't to say, hey, I had a great idea, look how well I can write, explain it to you.
Right.
It's to say, hey, I know some new stuff that can help you. Let me see how clearly I can and quickly I can hand it over to you.
I love this. You know, when I'm sitting here listening to you, I keep getting these two words, and it's this like courageous quest. But you know, it's you know this. You are from at least from just listening to you and feeling your energy this morning, Shahroo. It's this thing of you're the embodiment of the eternally into the internal and eternal quest of the depth, the truth, the ability, the genuine desire to want to see within yourself everything there is to see. And through lived experience, share that in the ways that you can.
Thank you, Josie. I'm going to get you to write my LinkedIn profile. Say that exact thing verbatim. And then Rhea.
Yeah. No,
You are, what did you say that before Quest?
Courageous quest.
Courageous quest.
Yeah.
Do you know, as I say though, I think I'm just good at presenting things to people in the ways that they need to hear them.
Mm.
And as I said, I mean, it kind of loops back to the beginning of this conversation, what that was born out of, who knows at this stage. But for now, I can tell you that I think that's the quest, essentially, is to say, this information is here and it can be helping this person, but it won't until it's put in this way for them at this time. And I have a good sense of the time and the way. And I think that good sense has been honed and channeled and focused through, I mean, it's over 10,000 hours now, one-to-one. And, you know, whether it's an ADHD thing or a Shahroo thing, or whatever else. Oh God, I just said my own name in the third person. I think when I'm good at something, I'll do more of it. And when I do more of it, I get good at it, you know, and it kind of becomes. And so, for example, the confidence with which I can sit here, even tell you, like, Josie, it's so early in the morning. What's up, dude? And still know that I can, like, that I'm bringing that I'm bringing helpful stuff, and that I will stay on point, and I'll be focused, and I'll make sure that you get the best out of me. Again, that's all led by this constant sort of almost like a spine that's going through all of it, that says, have you handed over something that someone would find helpful, actionable, practical, realistic, relatable? And I just keep an eye on that, and that it's coming from a robust place, and then it's delivered in the clearest way possible. And so what that also does is make it less about me, to be honest with you. Because you can't take the ego and the vanity and all of it out of this kind of stuff. But what it means is that on my worst day, I can still just draw from what I've seen and what I know, and what most importantly, really, as a result of this conversation, what change the person in front of me is going to feel more capable of making that they didn't feel capable of making before.
Love that. Wow. Another breath in. And let that sink in. Wow. It's rare that I am stuck for words. It was really very powerful. No, let me rephrase. You are really very powerful.
Thank you.
Shahroo, I could sit here with you all day. I will ask you, even though you've already shared so many incredible, incredible nuggets, wisdom, tools, practical tools, relatable tools, inspiring tools. But if there was just one or two soul messages for humanity with the wisdom that you don't only sit in, but walk in, talk in, reflect on, speak about at this moment in Shahroo life. And yes, I talk about you in third person because cool name, Shahroo. What would that one or those two messages be?
Soul messages. You mean like advice? Like a...
From the core of you to the core of humanity.
Okay, don't wait. You know, I was saying earlier how I waited for ages before going back to psychology and what I was good at. That was because my mother almost gave me the permission to get it wrong, the permission to play it out, and almost the license to to let myself do what I wanted. And I would say, like, really think about it when you're asking for permission. Ask about, like, well, what do I want that other person to tell me? Because a lot of the time you already know. And I think that if at the time, like now I do it for myself, like, why am I calling this person? Because I want them to tell me this, this, and this. Right. Well, then that's what's going on. So I would say that if you're waiting for someone to validate something, usually the insight is in that itself. And ask yourself, what do I want to hear? Is it something I can say to myself? And the other thing I will say is that go where you're, if you have the luxury to do so, go where you really are not celebrated in the sense that people are just blowing air up your ass, but go where people can see that your strengths are really, really strengths. You know, because I've been in contexts where, like, I'm a good trainer and facilitator and group and public speaker, but I delivered training over a decade ago now that was amongst people who didn't appreciate the type of intelligence that I have, very much valued the type of intelligence that I'm less strong in, or I have less of, I guess. and it was a constant uphill battle, and it was a shame. So I would say, where possible, put yourself in a situation with friends, with work. It's one of those, like, life is hard enough. If you can find a place where, you know, people don't act like you're cringe, they act like you're hilarious, or people don't think that you're oversharing, they can't wait to hear your next story, then do it, because it's a false economy otherwise, whether it's productivity or quality of life or how long you're likely to be in that job or that relationship.
Absolutely love that, Shahroo. That is so, 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 so true. And just a little side note to that. It's so true, and it's so interesting because you know that those. Well, I know you know, but I'll give you my personal example. So I had this little voice in my head that was like, "You're too impatient. You just want everything in a rush. You're too impatient, right?" And then that story was that, oh, you know, I don't stick around with the one thing for long enough, you know, because I'm impatient, right? And I was doing a new thing. And then I noticed I had that voice, and I was like, no, I'll try harder and I'll do more. And it felt like such an uphill struggle, exactly like you just expressed, right? And then one day I came home and I was like, what the fuck? I am absolutely not that. You know, I absolutely, if there's something that I love, something that really lights me up, or something that I feel, where I feel deeply alive, I do it all the time, all the time, all the time. Will I get paid or not paid, celebrate, not, like, it's just, I do it all the time. And so, you know, it can be something as simple as that. We all have these little stories, right? We have the voice that's like, yeah, go Josie. And then we have another voice that's like, oh no, here we go again, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
But when I noticed that, like, just something as simple as that, I was like, no, it's not that I don't, you know, that I can't commit to something. Is that I was trying to make myself, I was telling myself I have to commit to something I don't want to commit to. But when it's something that I want to commit to, I do it all the time, my whole life. So
It's harder not to than to do it.
100%,
Mm.
100%. So yeah, just sitting here going like, yes, I love, 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 love your advices. Shahroo, so much love. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Where can people find you apart from your incredible, amazing name? I have to say it again, Shahroo Izadi. Oh, love that name.
ShahrooIzadi.com, Instagram, places that, yeah, all the places where a name like mine would pop up. Yeah, just Google it. And Instagram, website, you know, things like that, LinkedIn. I've got books with my name.
Perfect, as it should be. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you,
Thank you,
thank
Josie.
you.
Bye, darling.